My name is Kaylin Vance, and I am a salvager. That is the polite term for what I do. The impolite term is space scavenger, and on the fringes of the Cygnus Reach, it is a lonely and desperate way to live. My ship, the Luck Penny, was held together by hope, electrical tape, and the kind of prayers you only whisper when you are light years from help. She was a beat-up Hauler-class freighter with a hull that had more patch jobs than original metal. She was ugly, she was slow, and she was mine. And right now, she was dead in the water. A microasteroid storm, the kind that doesn't show up on sensors until it's too late, had shredded my port thruster assembly and taken out my primary power regulator. I was drifting near an uncharted gas giant, my life support ticking down to a generous estimate of 48 hours. I sent out a distress beacon on all frequencies. It was a formality. The reach is vast, and most captains who hear a distress beacon do the math. Rescue takes time, fuel, and risk, and the reward is usually a dead man's thanks. They don't answer. I was running calculations on how long I could stretch my oxygen when a proximity alert blared through the cabin. A ship had dropped out of FTL directly in my path. It was small, ancient. It looked like a vintage Zillion courier vessel, the kind they stopped making 2 centuries ago. Its paint was faded, its hull was scuffed, and one of its landing lights was flickering. It was, I thought with a strange sense of kinship, even uglier than the Luck Penny. A voice crackled over my comm. It was a woman's voice, calm and low, with a hint of an accent I couldn't place. Luck Penny, this is the Silent Moth. I received your ping. You look like you're having a rough day. I almost laughed. That's an understatement. I'm Kaylin. Thanks for stopping. Most people don't. The line was quiet for a moment. Then, most people are idiots. I'm Cora. I'm coming over. Don't shoot me. I watched through my viewport as the little ship drifted closer and docked with my airlock. The hiss of pressure equalization was the sweetest sound I'd heard in hours. When the inner door opened, I got my first look at my savior. She was human or close enough. Medium height, with dark hair pulled back in a practical knot. She wore a grease-stained jumpsuit that had been patched so many times it was more patch than original. Her hands were calloused, and there was a smudge of oil on her cheek. She carried a heavy toolkit that looked older than I was. She looked around my cockpit with the quick, assessing gaze of a professional. Hauler class. Nice bones. Terrible wiring. She looked at me. I'm Cora. Show me the damage. Part 2. The Mechanic. For the next 6 hours, Cora fixed my ship. And I don't mean she helped. I mean she fixed it. She crawled into access panels I hadn't opened in years because I was too afraid of what I'd find. She rewired the power regulator with components she pulled from her own kit. She climbed out onto the hull in zero gravity with no safety line to manually realign the thruster assembly. She talked to my ship like it was a living thing, muttering encouragements and occasionally scolding a stuck bolt. I handed her tools, made coffee from a stale packet, and mostly stayed out of her way. You're good at this, I said, watching her solder a connection with steady hands. She shrugged, not looking up. I've had practice. Ships are simple. They want to work. You just have to listen to them. Most mechanics I've met just want to overcharge me and leave. That made her smile. It was a small smile, but it changed her whole face. Most mechanics are lazy. I like the work. It's honest. We talked as she worked. I told her about my life as a salvager, the close calls, the big score I was always chasing but never caught. She listened more than she spoke. When she did talk about herself, it was in fragments. She grew up on a cold planet. She learned engineering from an old woman who took her in. She traveled alone because she preferred it that way. No crew. I asked. Crews are complicated, she said. People have expectations. On a ship, it's just me and the machine. The machine doesn't want anything from me except maintenance. By the time the luck penny hummed back to life, her engines purring like contented cats, I was exhausted, and she looked like she'd just finished a light workout. She packed her tools, wiped her hands on a rag, and nodded with satisfaction. She'll get you where you're going. The thruster alignment is temporary. You'll want to get it welded properly at a real dock. But it'll hold. I stood there, overwhelmed. Cora, I don't know how to thank you. I don't have much, but I have some salvage credits, or I can trade you some parts. She held up a hand. Keep your credits. Just do me a favor. Anything. Next time you see someone broken down, stop. That's payment enough. She turned to leave, and something urgent rose in my chest. I didn't want her to go. It was irrational. I'd known her for less than a day, but in the vast, empty dark of space, she had been a light. Wait, I said. At least let me make you a proper meal. I have some real food, not just ration packs. It's the least I can do. She paused at the airlock. For a moment, I thought she'd refuse. Then she looked back at me, and that small smile returned. All right, Kaylin. One meal. Part 3. The star map. I cooked. It wasn't much, a protein stir-fry with some vegetables I'd been saving, but it was hot, and it was real. We ate in the luck penny's tiny mess, the ship humming around us, the gas giant glowing through the viewport. After we ate, I pulled out my star charts. I'm heading to the Nexus station tomorrow. Big trading hub. If you're heading that way, we could travel together. Safety in numbers. Cora looked at my charts, and her expression shifted. She pointed to a region I'd marked as unexplored. You shouldn't go near that sector. Why not? It's restricted. I laughed. Everything's restricted if you're not supposed to be there. What's the worst that could happen? Pirates? She looked at me with an intensity that made me stop laughing. The Throne Nebula. It's off limits. Not by pirate law. By imperial decree. I stared at her. The Empire? The Riken Empire hasn't interacted with the Reach in 100 years. They're a myth to most people out here. You're telling me they still enforce borders? They enforce everything. How do you know that? She was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small data chip. She slid it across the table to me. Put this in your NAV computer. It'll update your charts with the real boundaries. Keep you out of trouble. I looked at the chip. It was military-grade encryption, the kind you couldn't buy on the open market. Cora, I said slowly. Who are you? She stood up. I'm someone who hopes you'll take my advice. Thank you for dinner, Kaylin. Safe travels. She was gone before I could stop her. I watched through the viewport as the silent moth detached and drifted away. Just before she jumped to FTL, her ship flashed its landing lights 3 times. A goodbye. I sat there for a long time, holding the data chip. Then I inserted it into my NAV computer. The star map that loaded made my blood run cold. Suddenly, sectors I'd thought were empty were marked with symbols I didn't recognize. Military installations, patrol routes, restricted zones, and at the center of it all, the Throne Nebula, marked with a single glyph, the Imperial Crest. The chip hadn't just updated my charts. It had given me access to classified Imperial navigation data. Part 4. The truth. I should have let it go. I should have flown to Nexus Station, sold my salvage, and never thought about Cora again. But I'm a salvager. Curiosity is an occupational hazard. I started digging. I visited backwater stations and asked quiet questions. I traded favors for information. I followed a trail of whispers that led me deeper into the Reach, then out of it, toward the glittering core worlds I'd never dared to visit. It took me 3 months. The truth, when I found it, didn't make sense at first. Cora wasn't a mechanic. Cora wasn't a drifter. Cora wasn't even her real name. Her real name was Coriana Vespera. She was the sole heir to the Riken Empire. And 6 months ago, she had been crowned empress. The news holos showed a different woman. In the official portraits, Empress Coriana wore robes of spun starlight and a crown of frozen fire. She stood on balconies overlooking endless crowds. She commanded fleets. She ruled 1,000 worlds. But I knew her. I knew the woman with grease under her nails who talked to ships like they were friends. I knew the woman who refused payment for saving a stranger's life. I knew the woman who ate stale vegetables in my cramped mess and smiled like it was the finest meal she'd ever had. She had been running away. The imperial court, I learned, was a nest of vipers. The empress was young, untested, and surrounded by advisors who wanted to control her. There had been an assassination attempt, the third since her coronation. So she had done the one thing no one expected. She had disappeared. She had stripped off her robes, put on a patched jumpsuit, climbed into an ancient ship, and vanished into the fringes of her own empire. She had gone looking for something real. And she had found me. Part 5. The Return. I didn't seek her out. I'm a salvager, not a fool. You don't chase an empress who doesn't want to be found. But a year later, my comm crackled with a familiar voice. Luck Penny. You still alive? My heart stopped. Cora? A pause. That's not my name. I know. I know who you are. Silence stretched so long I thought the connection had died. Then, I know you know. My intelligence network is better than yours. I laughed despite myself. I'm sure it is. Why are you calling? I'm back home. It's complicated. But I remembered something. What? That meal. The one you cooked. It was the first time in years someone looked at me and didn't want something. You just wanted to say, thank you. Another pause. I'm surrounded by people who want my throne, my power, my favor. You're the only one who just wanted me to stay for dinner. I didn't know what to say. Cora, Your Majesty, Don't, she said quickly. Don't do that. Not with me. I'm still the woman who fixed your thruster. What do you need? She let out a breath. I need to know there's still a world out there where people are real. Where a ship is just a ship and a meal is just a meal. I have to rule this empire. But I needed to hear your voice first. To remind myself why. I looked out at the stars, thinking of the little ship with a flickering light. You saved my life, Cora. If you ever need me, if you ever need to escape again, my airlock is always open. She laughed. It was the small laugh I remembered. I might take you up on that. But not today. Today, I have an empire to run. Good luck. Goodbye, Kaylin. Keep my star map updated. The line went silent. Epilogue. The Empress and the Salvager. I never saw her again. But sometimes, when I'm drifting in the black, my comm will ping with an anonymous data burst. Sometimes it's an updated star chart. Sometimes it's a navigation warning. Sometimes it's just a single line of text. Thruster alignment holding? I always reply the same way. Holding.
Come check it yourself sometime.
She never does. But I like to think she smiles when she reads it. I'm still a salvager. The luck penny is still held together by hope and tape. But now, when I see a ship broken down on the fringe, I stop. I help. And when they ask how they can repay me, I tell them the same thing she told me. Next time you see someone broken down, stop. That's payment enough. Because somewhere out there, an empress is ruling 1,000 worlds. And I like to think that every time she signs a decree or faces down a scheming lord, she remembers a grimy little ship and a stupid salvager who just wanted her to stay for dinner. She fixed my ship,
I didn't know she ruled the empire.
but I knew her.
And that was enough.